Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The Manhattan Transfer performs its 50th anniversary farewell tour live at Strathmore in North Bethesda, Maryland this Friday. I spoke to longtime member Janice Siegel about the group's greatest four-part harmonies that dominated the Grammys in the 80s and wowed millennials with an appearance on TV's Home Improvement. Hey, Janice Siegel. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP.
My pleasure, Jason.
We are here talking about your famous group, the Manhattan Transfer, a 10-time Grammy-winning vocal group. Hard to believe, 10. Take that, everybody else. Manhattan Transfer is coming to Strathmore. So what can we expect from the show? I know it's always hard because I don't want to spoil the set list, but maybe is there a way you could kind of maybe tease a song or two or three, give us a sense of maybe some of your greatest hits or covers or anything we're going to hear?
This is a 50th anniversary show, and we'll be performing with the great Diva Jazz Orchestra. So you can expect some of the early big band numbers that we haven't been doing really live, in the past 10 years, even 20 years. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun. It's a little bit of a retrospective, although it's hard to do 50 years worth in just 90 minutes, but we'll do our best.
Awesome. Well, since it is sort of a retrospective, let's go through a little of the retrospection, if you will. How to remind our listeners how the group formed originally.
We got together in 72, which would make us 50 years old.
There you go.
And,
that makes sense. Doing the math.
Yeah, do the math, baby. We met in Manhattan, hence the name.
I think there was like an earlier version that Tim Hauser had, but your group, the actual group we've come to know and love that is celebrating 50 years, was the one that was formed in 72.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, could you shed a little light on how you met Alan Paul and Laurel Massey and Tim Hauser? Like how did the group come together?
Tim was a cab driver, and he actually picked up Laurel in the cab, and I also met him through the cab, funnily enough. So that's kind of a wacky story. Then Tim and I and Laurel found ourselves together, and we decided to sort of reform a new iteration of the Manhattan Transfer, and we wanted another man. We wanted two men and two women to make it, even kind of like the old vocal groups like the Pied Pipers, where you have that mixed gender sound. So we found Alan swinging on a rope on Broadway. He was in the original cast of Grease, a new show that opened up in 1972 on Broadway.
Some new show that no one had heard of at the time, and now we all know.
Yeah, well, now we all know it.
Who did he play? What role was he playing?
He was Teen Angel.
Oh, he was the Teen Angel. All right.
He was Teen Angel. It was actually a double role. He was Johnny Casino and Teen Angel.
Ah, okay. And then in the movie, who was it? Was it Frankie? Frankie Avalon?
Avalon did his role. Yeah.
Right. The beauty school dropout, that whole thing.
Right.
That's exactly. Awesome. I know you have a slightly different lineup now, right?
Yeah. Well, Tim Hauser, our founder, passed away in 2015. So sadly, we miss him terribly, but we have a wonderful bass singer, Tris Curlis. It's been with us Tris was actually subbing for Tim when Tim was ill. So Tris has been with us quite a while. And that's that. It's Cheryl Benteen, myself, Alan Paul, and Tris Curlis. And the fabulous Diva Jazz Orchestra.
Absolutely. Take a moment. I want to take a moment to, if your fellow Manhattan Transfer, cohorts are listening to this, I want to know, like, one by one, like, what makes each one of them special. Sort of embarrass them, nothing bad. Embarrass them, with kindness, with compliments. Make them blush a little bit. What makes Alan Paul so great? We'll start there.
Well, Alan is a pure, real entertainer. I mean, it's actually how, he was a role model for me to learn how to entertain, because I came more from the just purely music side of things and recording. So, Alan gives 1,000%, on stage every show. Trist is an awesome musician, and he really is the reason we could keep going, after Tim's passing, because that was pretty tragic and life-changing. So he's been a great companion in these final years of the transfer. And Cheryl is our super soprano. I mean, she's also an incredible entertainer, and just, I mean, we don't do solos so much anymore, but I used to love to listen to everybody sort of do their own thing for a little bit in a show for solos. But you'll be able to hear a lot of people's voice, solo turns, in this show at Strathmore.
Awesome. Thanks for, building up all of your fellow colleagues there. And then for old time's sake, just while we're at it, for fans that were with you all from the beginning, what made the late Tim Hauser so special? And then also, and Laurel Massey. Massey left the group after like a car accident too. Man,
yeah,
I mean,
7 years after we started, she
Yeah.
decided to leave. But we're going to be reuniting with her actually for a special show in Albany, which is going to be the 29th of March.
Oh, great. Oh, great.
So yeah,
Well, what made Tim, in hindsight now, and after his passing, why was he such a great key founding, a foundation of the group? What made his voice so
he
good?
had vision. He had vision, like all leaders do. He had vision and he had knowledge. He knew so much about music and a wide array of music. From doo-wop to bluegrass to bebop to swing. He just was a fountain of knowledge, and I learned a lot from him.
Awesome. Talk about sort of that early debut, your recording debut, at least. I know you formed in 72, but the actual album debut, I guess, what was it, 75, the Manhattan Transfer?
75.
Talk about putting that one together, and also how at that time you were mostly still like an East Coast, sort of building up a cult following. Talk about sort of those days before the big CBS variety special series on TV.
Yeah. Well, we were playing a lot of small clubs in New York City, and sort of underground clubs, late night shows, 3 shows a night, whatever. We performed a lot in New York, especially these little cabarets that were popping up in New York. It was a good, timing is everything. It was the time when glitter rock was starting, and sort of people were starting to dress up again after the sort of jeans and t-shirt era of an introspection of the folk era, the singer-songwriter era. So people were starting to go out and dress up, and we were the perfect group for that. Because not only were we dressed up in vintage clothes or, crazy clothes, but we were performing, we were entertaining. We weren't just standing there and singing, although we were singing fairly complex music in 4-part harmony. We always wanted to entertain as well, to really visually express the music. So by the time we got our first record deal, we had pretty much gone through almost every record label, and although they loved us and loved us live, they couldn't figure out how to sell records with us until we met Ahmet Ertegun. And he just signed us the night he saw us, because I think in large part because we appealed to his personal taste. But I don't think he gave it too much, real thought about how he was going to sell the records. He just signed us, and we made our first record with Atlantic Records, basically material that we had been performing, for a couple of years. So that was pretty tight already. We were with Atlantic for 15 years. We had a good relationship with them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you only knew how many artists I've interviewed on here that credit Ahmet Ertegun. I mean,
yeah. Well, he was legendary, and his brother as well, Neswig.
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned it briefly, but So how much did that 1975 CBS variety TV series help out, boost your, I guess, your recognizability beyond just, your East Coast fans that were coming out to your
I
shows?
don't know. I don't know if it did. I'm not sure if it translated into record sales or any of that, because we were very, very popular. The numbers showed
Mhm.
that we had a lot of viewers on the West Coast, on the East Coast, but in the middle of the country, it was nothing.
Mm.
I'm not quite sure how that helped us. It was an incredible experience to go from playing small little underground clubs and buying thrift store clothes to having a major television show on CBS.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, and it wasn't just the East and West Coast of America. It also, quote, pun intended, transferred over the pond, because didn't you have a number 1 hit in Europe too, right?
Chanson de Moya
Yeah,
was
thanks for saying it way better than I could.
that. Well, I took French in high school. I'm not much more far along than you, but
Chanson d'amour, is that how you say it?
chanson d'amour.
Chanson d'amour. Awesome. Well, it showed you had some, you could cross
It
the pond.
it shows you what I can do with 3 years of high school French.
That yeah, exactly. The Paris transfer. There you go.
Yes.
Transferred out of a French class, apparently. Well, and I'm trying to remind some of our listeners some of the, the actual individual tunes they might recognize too, because what was the first was Birdland? Was that the first Grammy you won?
That was the first Grammy. Yeah, actually, we won 2 Grammys for Birdland. I won one for best vocal arrangement, and then later that evening we won for best jazz vocal. Yeah, so that was the first. Yeah, 1980.
1980, and then, as we mentioned, 10 more followed. So we probably
Yep.
I won't make you list all of them, but do you
That's
do you,
good, because I don't know if I can.
yeah, I mean, Boy from New York City, Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, Until I Met You, Corner Pocket, Route 66, Why Not, Vocalise was, I guess, an album, Another Night in Tunisia, Brazil, Sassy, and we could go on and on.
We could go on.
Not just Grammys, but everything else. What was it like getting inducted in the Vocal Group Hall of Fame? I guess that was in 98.
Yeah, that was a big honor. A big honor. We're aside from being singers, we're historians and lovers of vocal music, the history of it. I collect, and so does Alan, and so does Trist, really, vocal groups. So I love analyzing them and seeing the different styles of harmony that they do. So it was a thrill. It was definitely a thrill. I forget who else was inducted that year with us, but um, it always has a lot of vocal group aficionados there.
Gotcha. Well, I'm also, in addition to, a music fan, I'm also a huge, movie and TV fan. So you probably know where I'm going with this, but I want to ask you about a couple of the, Manhattan Transfer's guest appearances on other shows and movies and things. So I will never forget seeing you all in that Christmas episode of Home Improvement with Tim Allen. And you're on the set of Tool Time, coming on and singing, what was it? Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and it came upon a midnight clear. How exciting was it to be on the set of Home Improvement that show was so red hot at the time you came on there.
It was great. And what's his name? Tim
Allen.
Tim Allen was wonderful. Yeah, really. They made us feel very special. It was great.
And remember what Richard Karn played Al Borland, and there was a whole thing where, 2 members of your group were Tim and Al, and they said, "Hey, do you work for him or something?" He said, "I don't think so, Tim."
Yeah.
They were trying to chainsaw Santa Claus out of the chimney, and you have to keep going to town.
Gee, you really did watch it a few times. Wow.
It was one. I think we recorded it on a VHS and watched it every Christmas. So those Christmas episodes keep you in rotation. You know what I mean? Well, and also, speaking of which, in terms of the big screen, didn't you record a couple songs for A League of Their Own as well, the baseball movie?
Yes, we recorded Choo 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 Boogie and Sunny Side of the Street, I believe.
Yeah, those were the two. Well, what was it like getting to sit there and you look up on screen and see, Tom Hanks and everybody, and you hear your song on the soundtrack? It's got to be a bizarre feeling, just sit in the theater and actually hear your stuff.
I wouldn't say it's bizarre. It's pretty great. But a lot of times you don't know how they're going to use the music. You don't, that's not in your contract or your purview. You record the song, but then they use it sometimes in unexpected ways, like when we recorded Route 66 for Sharky's Machine with Burt Reynolds. We did this great arrangement of Route 66. Bobby Troop and Julie London came to the session. It was awesome. And then in the actual movie, it's playing in on a tiny little radio, like just a snippet of it as Burt Reynolds comes into an apartment or something. So all that work, and it's coming out of this tiny 1-inch speaker in the movie.
I know, it probably sounded so like lo-fi or whatever out of that little speaker on screen and a diegetic sound on a screen, and you're like, wait a minute, we worked so hard on that. Well, cool. Well, speaking of that year, I mentioned the Tim Taylor thing Christmas episode, but tell me about sort of your Christmas albums. I guess you released the first Manhattan Transfer Christmas album that year that you did that appearance on the show, 92. So
yeah,
and you followed up with Acapella Christmas.
Yeah. The first one was with the great Johnny Mandel, which was a real thrill, and I'm so grateful we got to work with him at all.
Right, that's a legend.
He became a friend.
And then I guess you also followed up with the Pentatonics Christmas. You kind of did a White Christmas collab with them. I guess Pentatonics, I guess, could be a modern version of you guys. I don't know if that's a fair comparison, but
no, definitely, I think we influenced them a little bit. But yeah, they're a modern version. Certainly, they have more people. We stayed like pretty pure with just the 4 parts, which is more difficult. The tenors have to have a bigger range for starters,
Absolutely. But don't you think the foursome, your all's voices and your harmonies, it's sort of tailor made to put Christmas albums out? I'm glad you finally did.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, anything else we want to say about the show? You've been more than generous with your time. Why should our folks come on out to the Strathmore on the 24th?
Because it's going to be. I mean, if you love harmony and you love big band music, and any of our songs, because we're going to be doing 2.5 hours worth of show. It's a big show, and the addition of Diva just makes it so special. So we're going to be doing stuff from the very first record all up until the latest one, The Junction. Well, the 50 is really the latest, but we're not doing anything from 50 for this show.
Do you have a final seconds? You just inspired this question. Do you have a favorite of all of the albums that you did? I know that's a hard question, but I'll phrase it this way. If we have younger listeners tuning into this and you want them to do, like discover Manhattan Transfer, like where would be like a good entry point for them to go back in your discography and say, all right, this is what we're all about?
That's a tough question. Yeah. I mean, my favorite record is probably Vocalese, because I love that art form. I love that style of jazz singing. That's where you lyricize an existing instrumental and you basically make up a new song. You construct a new song, singing all the solos and all the background parts. So we've been doing that from the very get with our music. But Vocalese is a collaboration with the great Jon Hendricks. So if they have any interest in like John Vocalese or Jon Hendricks, Lambert Hendrickson Ross, this is a continuation of that art form.
Awesome. So your favorite is Vocalese, and I will tell our listeners a little tidbit that Vocalese got 12 Grammy nominations, meaning I guess it's second only to Michael Jackson's Thriller as like most nominated for an album, I believe. At least it was at the time. But we got to let folks know, younger ones, how big Manhattan Transfer was and is at the Strathmore coming up on March 24th.
We really are looking forward to it.
Yes, well, we really are. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure, Jason.
All right, be well. We'll see you at Strathmore.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.